Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome back to TaylorMade Cards for You. Well, recently I took a trip down with my husband to Las Vegas. And of course, whenever I travel out of town, I love to check out some of the local stamp shops. Many of you are probably familiar with Viva Las Vegas stamps, and they have some awesome stamps. So of course I had to check it out. Now, the store was amazing, I have to tell you. It had rows and rows of stamps, and most of the stamps were on the wood blocks, so you could purchase them right off of the shelf. But I don't collect the wood block stamps anymore. They just take so much room. And you know what I mean if you have been collecting stamps for a while. We tend to hang on to our stamps, and at some point the room just gets a little bit out of control. So I like to purchase my stamps whenever possible unmounted. Not only is it a great savings, but it also is a way to have more stamps. And of course, we all want more stamps. So for this video, I wanted to go ahead and share with you what I do when I get my unmounted stamps and how I actually store them. Now, on the left, you'll see the unmounted stamps, and then on the right, I showed you one of the mounted stamps. And I'm going to go ahead and show you my process really quick here. Now, the product that I'm showing you here is called Easy Mount, and you can get this at any of the local craft stores online. They have different sizes of foam, but I tend to go with the thinner foam. I don't need for it to be really thick. Many of us have those stamp platforms that work well with this, or even an acrylic block would work fine. And then I also use the Stuftainers, the thin ones, to store my mounted stamps. And then I have this Brothers label maker that I label my stamps. Now, as far as labeling, I tend to label my stamp sets based on the company that I get them from. So for instance, I got these stamps from Viva Las Vegas, so the label that I'm creating is going to say Viva Las Vegas. But you can certainly store your stamps however you want. I know some people like to store them by theme. So for instance, you could put Christmas stamps, and for the holidays I do tend to do that because I want to be able to find all of my holiday stamps easily. But for the most part, I tend to go towards labeling based on where I get the stamp. And that's really because of the fact that I do videos and I want to be able to credit the company when I use their stamp, and that just makes it easy for me. Now, the best value for your dollar, of course, is to get the full plate, which is on the left-hand side. And you can get these from a lot of companies, and they will house a lot of your stamps for a good value rather than buying them individually. And I did both. But when I was in Viva Las Vegas, they offered this stack for $25 that had a retail value of over, I think, $100. And they were in the rectangular plates. I wasn't really sure what I was getting, but I figured it was a good value, and I'm always up for a good surprise. And I really did get some good stamps. Some of the stamps that I got I probably won't use, and I'll end up giving them away, but some of the stamps were really great, and I was happy with my grab bag. Now, some of the ones that I already cut out are ones that I specifically chose, and when I was there, she hooked me up with a pad and paper, and I just walked through the store and I wrote down which stamps I wanted. Remember, all of the stamps were actually on wooden blocks, so what I needed to do is write down what stamp set I wanted, and then within a couple of days after I got home, I had my set. And it was a really easy process. Okay, so once you have your rubber unmounted stamps on your Easy Mount foam, then it's time to cut it out. Now, I usually will use an old pair of scissors when I'm separating my rubber stamps, and that's because you're going to get a lot of that stickiness on your scissors. But then I also come in for my more detailed cut with my small tonic scissors. Now remember, when you are cutting on the foam mount, you are going to get some of that stickiness on your scissors. So you're going to want to be aware of that. And if you really don't want to use your good scissors, you might want to take that into consideration. But you can easily get some of that stickiness off with just regular rubbing alcohol and a cotton swab. It is easy to come off, so don't fret if you are using your good scissors. So initially what I do is I'll just kind of cut around the rubber stamp, so that way I can just separate them. And then, like I said, I'll go in with my tonic scissors to get a more detailed cut. One thing that I like to do, and hopefully when you do buy your stamps unmounted, they don't come really trimmed. And what I mean by that is they have some rubber on the outside, because what is really nice about mounting your own stamps is you can cut as close to the design as possible. And of course, we all know that if we cut as close to the design as possible, then we won't have the possibility of getting any of that excess ink on the outside of the image. Sometimes if you push too hard with your inks and your stamp, you'll get some of that excess ink outside of the image, and we certainly don't want that. We want nice, crisp, clean images. All right, so once I have all of my stamps separated, then like I said, I go in with my mini scissors and I cut around the actual image. Now you want to cut as close to the image as possible without actually damaging your image. So you want to be really careful with that. Now, sometimes if I don't have an idea or exactly know what I'm going to be doing with some of these images, then I'll keep some of them together. So for instance, on the left-hand side on my actual mat, you can see all of those numbers. And I wasn't really sure if I wanted to separate those numbers. They're actually perfectly evenly spaced, and I may just use them together. So keep that in mind when you do get your stamp sets. If there's any stamps that you know you're going to be fussy cutting, or you want to keep them together, then cut them out that way. I could have easily cut these numbers separately, but I think I probably will be using them together to create borders or just backgrounds. I'm not sure yet, so I'm going to go ahead and keep those all together. Now, there's many companies out there that will actually offer their stamps unmounted. Obviously, Viva Las Vegas does that, and I Break for Stamps also does that as well. I was part of their design team, and a lot of the stamps that we got from them were unmounted, and I mounted my own stamps. I think Riley and Company does that as well, because again, I was part of their design team, and whenever we got new designs, we got the stamps unmounted. But when you're shopping for your stamps, see if that is an option, because you are going to get a lot of savings if you buy your stamps unmounted. And it really isn't that difficult to mount your own stamps. And like I said, many of the stamp companies will sell their stamps in the plates because that's the way they have them printed when they actually, or I should say printed, that's the way they have them created when they actually create their rubber stamps. And that's a really good savings as well if you get them in the rectangular sets versus individually. So keep that in mind. Now I wanted to go ahead and show you that you're not giving up quality when you mount your own stamps. So I wanted to go ahead and take one of the stamps that I recently mounted on my foam and show you how nice and crisp you can get an image. So I took this little XO that I had recently just cut out, and I added it to my stamp platform. Now again, if you don't have a Misti or one of the stamp platforms out there, you can easily stamp with acrylic blocks. It's the same as using an acrylic stamp or a stamp that has the rubber foam. And you can see that the backing holds really nicely to your acrylic plate. So I just took some ink and I added it like I would normally do for stamping, and using my Misti I just went over it a couple of times, and as you can see, the image is really nice, crisp, and clean. So you're not giving up quality. You're only giving up the extra expense of paying for another company to mount your stamps. Okay, so once you have all of your stamps on the foam, then it's time to store them. And this is where the Stuftainers come in. Now, those Stuftainers I get online, and they come in different sizes. But like I said, I get the thin ones because I do only store my unmounted stamps on these. And the stamps stick to your Stuftainer really nicely, just as if you were stamping on an acrylic block. The backing will hold to the plastic really nicely, so your stamps won't move all over the place. And it's just a matter of placing them in there to get the most for your money. So you want to do it like a puzzle, I guess, and figure out the best way to stamp all of your, or to store all of your stamps as tightly as possible. Now, some of you might be thinking that these don't have the picture on the back, so how are you going to know what stamps you have? But usually, at least for me, when I stamp for the first time, I'm able to pretty much tell what the image is. But if you do want to have the picture of what the stamped image looks like, I can go ahead and show you what I do for that as well. So if you do want to have the image on the outside of your Stuftainer, then what I've done in the past is stamp on some regular copy paper. And I like the copy paper because it's thin. And then I cut around it, I fussy cut it, and then I just add some adhesive to the outside of my Stuftainer right over the rubber stamp. And I usually use packing tape because I like to be able to cover the paper completely, but you could easily run your image through a Xyron or create a sticker, and then that way it will be permanently on your Stuftainer, but that's completely up to you. All right, so hopefully I've given you some ideas and some cost saving opportunities on purchasing your rubber stamps as well as storing them. I'll leave a list of the products that I use to store my stamps in the links below, along with the stores that I get them from, so that way if this is going to be a solution for your storage stamps, then you'll be able to find them easily. And again, here was an example of how I actually stamp and label my rubber stamps, so that way I can easily tell what images I have. And then again, I add my little label. This particular one was Viva Las Vegas, so that way when I do have them stored on my shelf, I can easily find them. And as a bonus, I did add a couple of pictures of my Viva Las Vegas trip, so that way you can see what an awesome store it was. Now don't forget to like my video and subscribe to my channel, so that way you can keep up on all of my tips and designs. Thanks for stopping by.